When I was growing up in Texas, autumn was my favorite season. I loved fall. The colors, the sweaters, the pumpkin spice, everything, because it meant cooler weather was coming. When you live in a part of the world where jumping into a swimming pool just feels like more sweat, you look forward to winter. But then I moved north. I lived in Chicago and then moved here to Wisconsin in 2017. And it took a while to realize, but I started to realize I didn't love fall as much. I still love the colors and the traditions, but now it's sort of tinged with this sense of dread. Fall means cold, long winter is coming. 2 weeks ago, my husband and kids ate dinner outside in our backyard. My children wearing t-shirts and kicking around a soccer ball in between bites of food, and I kept warning them, don't get your hopes up. Don't get your hopes up. And sure enough, 5 days later, we were hit with a record-breaking snowstorm. It was like Ostara showed up and then decided to go back to sleep for a while. She does that here in Wisconsin. We know that the sunny March days are a fake out, and yet it still feels devastating every time we get that early spring snow dump. 27 inches felt like a personal attack. James Pearson wrote the poem we heard earlier called Mud Season. He wrote this also about this time of year. Quote, a couple of years ago, I heard that some northeastern states have a fifth season. Between winter and spring, they call it the mud season. As soon as I heard that, he wrote, something deep inside me sighed. It was the sensation you get when someone names the exact thing you've been feeling but couldn't put words to yet. I had been through a hard winter a few years earlier, but when I came out the other side, it wasn't into the warmth of spring. It was into some long, uncertain middle ground. A time with no clear paths. He continues, in the Northeast, the mud season starts when the winter snowpack starts to melt, but the lower layers of the earth are still frozen. So instead of seeping down into the deep aquifers, all that snowmelt just sits on the surface and turns the topsoil into thick, boot-sucking mud. Meanwhile, spring and winter tussle over the weather. One day it's sunny and calm. The next is frigid and blizzarding again. It's a season of limbo. He writes, in my own mud season, I was finally starting to feel the compass arrow of intuition, pointing somewhere over the horizon. But there were no paths that started where I was and went that way. And when I tried to make my own, it was all false starts and uncertain slogs. But as I reflect, I can see some of its gifts. Its pathlessness forced me to tune in to that inner compass over and over, slowly honing my attunement to it. And its bogs and brambles taught me how committed some part of me is to making the journey. End quote. We are in the mud season. Don't get your hopes up, I told my kids as we enjoyed a sunny outdoor picnic. It's natural to fear that if we hope, we will be that much more devastated when the future turns out different than we expected. But when I was in my hospital chaplaincy internship, I learned a concept, the difference between finite hope versus infinite or transfinite hope. Finite hope is limited. It's like expectation. I hope it stays warm. I hope the Badgers win. I hope the doctor doesn't tell me that I have that diagnosis. Finite hope is a hope that something either will or won't happen. And when it pans out the way we hope, we're relieved. Or maybe we don't even notice. Have you ever noticed that we don't pay attention to things when they go the way we expect? But when it doesn't go the way we hoped, then we're grief-stricken. But transfinite hope, infinite hope, is hope beyond this moment. Hope beyond the outcome. Hope in a transformation or a vision that we can't even imagine. Hope beyond our lifetime. Hope for the arc of the universe to bend toward justice, even though we can't see it. When the goddess says healing is possible, but I will never be the same as I was before, transfinite hope is a willingness to say yes, or cheap, cheap, as the case may be. Martin Luther King spoke about this kind of transfinite, unseen hope 2 months before his assassination, when he said in a sermon in Washington, D.C., that, quote, "We must accept the finite disappointments, but never lose infinite hope." For him, disappointments were an understatement. Constant struggles, attacks, delays to justice that were real. But as he rightly noted, they were finite, they were limited. And he was encouraging his followers that each of those disappointments were steps toward a hope that was bigger than any of the individual challenges. He wasn't talking about an oversimplified Pollyanna rose-colored glasses version of hope. Of course, we know King had been beaten, imprisoned, his home and his church had been bombed. He was murdered not long after he gave this sermon. For him, those disappointments of which he spoke were fatal. The grief was and continues to be real. And yet, today, here we are, still talking about him and learning from him and carrying on a small part of his legacy. That's the infinite hope. As Unitarian Universalists, we have a wide range of beliefs and about the questions of theology. We don't all have the same answers about the big questions of life and death, God, meaning. So we certainly don't have a clear and obvious answer that we can point to about how to handle the kind of disappointments that King was talking about. We don't all believe in a God that has a cosmic plan or a guaranteed reward after life. But infinite hope does not require those things. Infinite hope is not a hope in a guaranteed cosmic outcome or a universal balance of right and wrong or a demand for our suffering and eventual reward. No. Infinite hope is what we've been talking about this month, a hope in the things seen and unseen. It's a hope that says what Dr. King said: setbacks, delays, even death cannot overshadow the fact that there is a better world. King called it the beloved community, and that so many of us are still striving to make it real. It's a hope that there's a possibility, there's growth, there's meaning-making, life and love to be found even in the harshest of conditions. When we find out that the funding falls through for our dream home, when we get the unwanted diagnosis, when the marriage or the relationship ends, or the career path changes unexpectedly. It can feel like getting 27 inches of snow dumped on you only days after a sunny picnic. It can feel unfair and scary, and the path is unclear. It's the mud season. And hope and new possibilities might take a while to show up. And they might take the form that was not even remotely expected. Remember, the bird survives, but it doesn't get to remain a bird. Ostara's gift of hope and life takes the form of whiskers and paws and long ears. And that new thing, that possibility, that hope, it can be beautiful and good, but it doesn't negate the grief of the loss or the change, the storm, or as King called them, the disappointments. I imagine that the bunny, as grateful as she was to have survived, to be released from pain, and to be able to be warm, I imagine, though, that sometimes she longed for her wings. From time to time throughout its hopefully long life, I think that sometimes she resented her paws and wished for flight. Grief does not disappear just because we have hope. Just because we're glad we have our new beautiful home, it doesn't mean we're not angry when we pass that other one. Hope can coexist side by side with grief. Hope can eventually, hopefully, soften the grief, and it can help build that inner compass that James Pearson talks about when faced with the muddy uncertainty of pathlessness. Hope shows up sometimes as a new opportunity you never would have considered, or a friend who's willing to listen, or the love of people around you. Hope shows up as a small victory after 100 losses, and gratitude when we can realize that we noticed the victory at all. Or hope maybe is a newfound awareness of your own strength and resilience, or a willingness to finally let yourself rest. In the storm and the mud, the grief and the confusion, the many disappointments, as James Pearson wrote, hold your longing a little longer in the sheltered care of your body, like soft green starts on the windowsill of your heart. May we have hope in the things unseen. Amen. And may it be so.